Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to make your own drawstring bag, a fully lined one that pulls nice and tight. You can make it with long handles to carry it around, you can make a great big one, you can make a tiny one. It's entirely up to you. So I'm Christine of christinescrafts.com and this channel is dedicated to crafting on a budget. So let's get started. You're going to need your fabric for your bag and your fabric for your lining. And out of your main fabric, you're going to cut two pieces. They're going to be 7 inches wide by 9 inches tall if you want to make one identical to mine. Obviously, you can change those measurements to whatever you like. And then you're going to cut out two pieces of lining exactly the same size. So whatever size you go for, you want two pieces of main fabric and two pieces of lining. You're also going to need something for your drawstring. So you could use rope, string, ribbon, perhaps the fabric that you've already got, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make mine out of the lining fabric so it all coordinates. So the first thing to do is to take your main fabric pieces and then you're going to place them the same way and you're going to place them right sides facing. And you're going to pin or clip around three sides. We're just going to leave the top open. So you line them up and work your way all the way around and just leave the top open. It doesn't matter if you prefer to clip them or pin them, and then that's ready to sew along those three sides. Then you need to take your two lining pieces and place them one on top of the other with their right sides facing. And we're going to do something similar. So you want to pin or clip right down one of the long sides. And then when it comes onto the bottom, you want to make sure you're going to leave a large gap in the bottom because we're going to use it later to turn our bag the right way out. Oh, we've been joined by the cat, Emily. We'll just ignore her. So I'm using some large clips so that I can mark that hole in the bottom to make sure that I don't accidentally sew it. So I'm going to sew down both sides. I'm going to turn the corner and sew a little bit of the bottom, but leave a fair-sized hole to turn everything through later. So you're going to sew and leave that gap at the bottom. So you're going to end up with what look like two bags. So take your main fabric over to the machine, start at one top edge, do a little bit of reverse. And remember, we need to do that on all our seams to keep them nice so that they don't come unraveled. Work your way down one side. Make sure you stay the same distance from the edge of your fabric all the way down, all the way round, and repeat the same distance on the lining so that everything sits nicely when your bag is complete. When you get to the bottom, make sure your needle is in, lift your foot, and turn through 90 degrees. Put the foot down and off you go. And then just work your way along to the other corner, turn in the same way and work your way up to the top. And then just finish off with a little bit of reverse. And that's the bag piece sewn. You're then going to take your lining pieces that you clipped or pinned together. And this time we're going to make sure we look where we've marked and we start sewing there. And then we're going to sew along to the corner and up the side. Again, reversing at the beginning and the end. It doesn't matter if you start at the top and work your way down to that hole or start at the hole and work your way up to the top of the bag, so long as you do remember to leave that hole. Otherwise, you're going to get a bit further on and you're not going to be able to turn your bag the right way out. Once you've got the lining done, you've got both pieces, you're then going to have a decision to make. If you just want to keep your bag as it is and you're not going to make any boxy corners at the bottom so it stands up, snip your corners and then move on to sewing your lining to your bag. If you want to make boxy corners so it stands up like I've done, you don't need to snip these corners, and you'll see why in a moment. Because what we're going to do is make a box corner, and we're going to do it on both the lining and the main piece. So make sure to avoid bulk that you press your seams open, and then you're going to open the bag at the bottom, so that you can line the seam along the bottom with the seam up the side and press them together, and then you're going to pin across and you're going to sew across there to form the box at the bottom of your bag. So you'll sew along. Now you need to repeat that for all 4 bottom corners, and it's important you get them the same size. So I suggest once you've pinned one and you think it's the sort of width you would like, measure how far down from the corner point you've done your line, and then measure it for the other 3. It's the only way to make sure your lining will sit nicely inside your bag. Pin it, or clip it, and repeat for the lining. You want all 4 of them done and ready before you start sewing. Take each one in turn to the machine, and again you're just going to do a little reverse at the beginning, a little reverse at the end, and just sew along where you've pinned it. If you clipped it and marked it with, for example, an air erasable pen, that's fine, but just go along your line and repeat for all 4. And you'll be able to see soon why you wouldn't bother clipping the corners, because once we've got all of these complete, we're going to trim up the excess. You don't need to worry about cutting off the corner and therefore ending up with your threads undone, because you've just sewn over them with the seam that you've just made. So once you've got all 4 done, that makes a lot of bulk in those corners. So cut it down to about the same seam allowance as you left on your side seams and your bottom seam. If you've pressed all your seams open, it just helps reduce the bulk in your bag. If you haven't, that's up to you. You don't have to, but it can just make it sit a bit better. So now we've got a bag and we've got a lining. We need to attach the 2 together. So you can see one of them, the bag is complete, and the lining still has a hole in the bottom. So because of that, you're going to take the main bag piece and turn it the right way out. Then you're going to place it inside the lining. And as you turn it out, you'll see how you've got those nice boxy corners. Place it inside the lining and take a little bit of time to push it down all the way and make sure it's sitting how you want it to and that it has worked how you were expecting. And then you're going to line the tops up. So make sure you line up the side seams and pin or clip them in place. And then you're going to do the same all the way around the top. I didn't find that I needed too many clips. It depends on the size of your bag. But just make sure it's lined up and everything's sitting smoothly, because you're going to sew around the top of this and sew your lining into your bag. And we do it this way to get a really nice finish. So once you've clipped it, pinned it, and you're happy with it, you need to take it over to the machine and sew the 2 together. You might find it's useful if you're doing a small bag to take any extra bits off your machine so that you can wrap it round the base of the machine, which is what I've done here. And then you just need to line up with the edge with your zipper foot and work your way all the way around. Keep going until you get back to where you started and just sew over the stitches you started with and do a little reverse so nothing comes undone. And now you're ready to turn it out. So through that hole you left in the lining, you're going to pull the whole bag and the lining. And you'll see we've now got that hole we need to sew up. You can slip stitch it closed so it's invisible, or you can just run a little bit of machine stitching along it, which is what I did. And now it's time to put your lining inside your bag. So just push it down inside the bag. Make sure you're happy with it, get it all lined up. And then you need to get a nice edge on the top of your bag. So you need to just work it with your fingers and get it so that the seam that you've just sewn is right at the top. There's no lining showing on the outside and none of the outside showing on the lining. And just keep working your way around doing that and either pinning it or clipping it. And then you're going to do a little row of top stitching all the way around the top of the bag. It's just going to hold it all nicely in place and give you a nice finished edge. So just line it up as close as you like. I tend to do it quite close, about 1/4 of an inch. Some people go really close, but I find that hard to be accurate. Again, just work your way around and a little bit of reverse at the end. So you've now got a bag, and we're just going to have to worry about a drawstring. If you're using rope or something similar, that's fine. If you want to make your own drawstring using fabric that matches, you'll see here I've got short pieces because I used a fat quarter, so I'm just going to sew them together. You just want some nice long lengths of fabric. And what you're going to do with each one is fold it in half lengthways and press it. And work your way all the way along the length until you've got it all folded in half. Then open it back up, and from one side you're going to fold the edge to the center that you've clearly got marked where you pressed it, and do that all the way along that side. Once you get to the end, you're going to do exactly the same thing with the other side. You're basically splitting it into quarters. And once you've done that, you need to fold it in from either side and then fold it along the middle and either pin or clip it in place. And repeat that all the way along the length. And once you're happy it's held and you're going to be able to sew it confidently, you're going to run a row of stitching all the way along that edge that you've just pinned. If you want to, you could also run another row of stitching along the other side just to make it symmetrical. I didn't, but you could. And then you're going to have a nice long drawstring that you can use in your bag. So now you need to make a casing for your drawstring, something for it to run through. So it's worth measuring your drawstring, how wide it is. If you're using a rope, just measure it. A ribbon, measure it. So I've made mine, it's about 1/4 of an inch wide. So I'm going to make sure my casing is wide enough for that and a little bit extra. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure 1.5 inches down from the top. So that 1.5 inches is what's going to stick out at the top of the bag and make a pretty edge. You can use whatever size you like, but 1.5 inches looks quite good on this size bag. And then you need to measure down how wide you want your casing. Now make sure it's plenty wide enough for your drawstring. So for example, I'm doing mine for 1/4 of an inch. I'm doing it a good, well, not 1/2 inch, less than that. So yeah, probably 3/8, something like that. Just make sure it's going to fit nicely. And mark it all the way round. If you're not confident, use an air erasable pen and actually mark it. If you feel confident, you can just mark it with pins. Check that your drawstring is going to fit, and then you're ready to sew. And you're going to sew all the way round on both of those seams that you've marked. Don't worry about the fact it's all enclosed. We'll deal with that shortly. So as before, when you were top stitching, just set off and sew all the way around, and then a little bit of reverse at the end. And do it along both of the seams that you marked, and that's going to form your little casing that your drawstring can go in. Once you've got them both in place, we need to work out how we're going to get the drawstrings in there. So you're going to go to your side seams, and only in between those 2 rows of stitches you're going to unpick the side seam. Just between those 2 rows of stitches. You can just get a little seam ripper in there, or a pin, or a needle, or even a tiny pair of scissors, and you're just going to undo those few stitches, and it's just going to make a nice little hole that we can get our drawstrings into. If you end in little threads, just clip them off. So do the same at the side seam on the other side, and now we're ready to simply put our drawstrings in. So take your first drawstring, and I recommend putting a safety pin in one end. It's so much easier to thread it through. And then place it through one hole in one of the side seams and work it in. And you're just going to work steadily, work it all the way around. And now you're going to realize that if you left a nice wide casing, it'll go through very easily. If your casing's a little bit tight, you might have trouble getting it through. Just keep working all the way around. As you get to the other side seam, you might have a bit of trouble getting past it. Just persevere, you will do. And then bring that drawstring right out again. So you've got the two sides back out of the same hole. Okay, and then what we need to do is take our safety pin off, put it on the other drawstring, and repeat the process for the other drawstring. Once we've got them both in, we'll make our drawstrings the length we want them. And that really is a personal choice. So long as it's long enough to go all the way through and come out when the bag's wide open, any extra length is up to you. So take your second drawstring, feed it through the other hole in the side seam, and then all the way around and back out. Now remember, you've already got a drawstring in there, so it might be a little bit tricky. Just persevere and get it back out of the hole you went in through. And then there you go, you've got all your drawstrings through and out. So now you just need to decide how long you want them and make sure they're both the same length. So you want your bag down smooth, you don't want it gathered up at all, and then you want to measure how much you've got sticking out either side and make sure they're the same. So I think I'm going to go for 6 inches either side of mine because I want them nice and long. As I say, if you just want a short drawstring handle, cut it quite close to the bag. I'm just adjusting it, and then I'm going to cut mine at 6. And then it's up to you. You can knot your drawstrings together to form a loop, or you can sew them. I'm going to overlap mine and sew a little rectangle on there so that it sews it nice and tight. And I will then feed that inside the casing. I'll do that for them both. But if you want to, you could just knot your two ends together and your bag is complete. So if you did sew them, what I recommend you do then is just pull your drawstring until that goes inside. If you have a little bit of resistance as it goes through the hole, just give it a little wiggle and help it in. And then your handles will just look great because they haven't got that stitching on them. And that's it. You've completed your drawstring bag. It's fully lined and very pretty. So well done. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please leave me a thumbs up below and any comments and letting me know how you get on with yours and how big a drawstring bag you make. And remember, if you like all sorts of crafts, especially on a budget, please subscribe to this channel and then you'll know when all my videos arrive. Thanks for watching. Good luck with your drawstring bag.